Yes, everybody, and welcome back to another daily drop brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me as he always does on these drops, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ here for another Carolina football related drop for this episode. And we're going to be talking about which new portal additions on the football team are flying maybe too much under the radar. Guys, fans maybe aren't talking about, media-wise aren't being talked about as much as they potentially should be for the impact they could have and more than likely will have on next year's team. So I've got my pick. You've got your pick. Let's dive into it. For you, if you had to pick one of the guys out of all the transfers that have come in, who are you going with you think's flying under the radar a little bit and maybe deserves a little bit more attention?
Well, you and I initially had the same guy. Mm-hmm. So for full disclosure, so I went with another one. You've changed before when we've had the same guy.
I've changed a few times.
So it's my turn to change. And I'm cool with doing that because I feel strongly about this anyway. I'm going to go with Ryan Coe, the place kicker from Cincinnati.
I like that.
I'm going to go with him for a couple of reasons. One, and we're guilty of this too, so much conversation in the offseason is about position players. But rarely do we talk about special teams. Although Brandon and I, when we do the podcast series coming up, we're going to do one on special teams. And Mac has placed tremendous importance on special teams. There are two sides to the ball, but there's three parts to the game. There's also the special teams, which it often won't win you games, but it can lose you games. And I think Carolina last year, when you look at those last four games, there were two different games in which missed field goals, especially field goals that should have been made, were costly. The NC State game and the Oregon game. Imagine if those two are converted. And one of those kicks against State is converted in overtime, and then that kick against Oregon is converted. Carolina's season looks a lot different. And I think the way people think right now about football, the level of optimism is very different, and it comes down to kicks. I'm not blaming Burnett. I'm not blaming anything like that. I'm just saying that's the way things played out. So with Ryan Coe, they got a guy who's pretty good. He's got a pretty good track record. He's got a strong as hell leg. You should look him up on social media and see some of the kicks that he was nailing in the practice facility about a month ago. He was hitting 60-yarders and stuff. Just got a strong leg. The thing that struck me most about him when I first met him back in January was you don't realize you're talking to a kicker just right away. You're talking to one of those guys who earns a scholarship his third year and is a beast on special teams. That's what he reminds me of. Yeah, he's strong. He's going to run. He's going to be an 11th potential tackler on special teams, unlike a lot of place kickers. So he's that guy. He's got a little bit of that tenacity. He's good on kickoffs. He's got a high touchback rate. He only missed 4 field goals last year. He missed one in the 20 to 29 range, one in the 30 to 39 range. A little bit of a concern, but that does happen. I don't know what the dynamics were. Were those blocked? Which might not necessarily be his fault. We don't know. Was there a bad hole? Were the laces pointing the wrong way? We don't know why he missed those. But I know when I've watched, and I know he missed one, I believe, in the spring game, but when I've watched him practice, he's got a strong leg. The ball explodes off his foot. He went to Carolina because he's trying to get to the NFL, and he thought that would be a better place to go for him to get to the NFL. So I think that he's someone that's going to be incredibly important. I don't know if he's going to perform to the level that people want, but he is highly important, and he's flying under the radar with respect to how when you check the boxes of what must be done, what must occur this fall for this team to have a huge season. Well, Ryan Coe is going to be one of those first 4 or 5 boxes that you check. Has to be, because of the importance of his position and how the end of last season was affected by that position not getting the job done.
Yeah, I love that pick because I think kicker's so important. I love how you referenced I go back to the State game all the time because I was on the sidelines right there for the kick, and 30-yard field goal. I mean, probably less than that. You got to make that. You got to make that in that situation. And just think of the aftermath of missing that. Yeah, Oregon too. Got to make those, man. And Mac knows that. So I think Mac knows that more than anybody because he harps on it all the time. And I think fans need to understand if you're bringing in a transfer kicker like Coe, there has to be a trust there. There has to be something that the staff likes about him and his ability. And I think Carolina with an improved kicker right there, I look at it kind of like a safety net. You got that safety net there. He can get you points if you get in the right positions. And that's huge, especially when you look at some of the close games Carolina's lost last year, the year before, and going back in the Mac Brown 2.0 era. So having a good kicker and having good special teams can definitely bail you out on that. So I love that pick. I think that's a good one. I think that's one a lot of people will agree with, because nobody really is talking about Ryan Coe because he's a kicker, and it's just not a position that gets a lot of time and a lot of attention from fans, especially outside of the season. I'm going to go with Nate McCullum. He was the guy that we both kind of agreed on first and foremost. And for me, it's simple. I'm not going to harp on him too much because and I'm not going to act like I'm a McCullum expert. I have watched some of his tape. I have seen him play at Georgia Tech, obviously, in the last few years when covering games and everything like that. But what I like about him is I like his experience. I love when you can bring in an experienced wide receiver. And I say the same thing with basketball, AJ, when you look at some of the guys that Carolina brought in for the basketball team. I love when you can go get guys out of your own league that have already produced and bring them into your program, especially when you're not bringing in like a guy who was maybe at Georgia Tech for a year and barely played. That's different. You're bringing in a guy, Nate McCullum, who is a 3-year veteran wideout for Georgia Tech, still has 2 years of eligibility left, appeared in 29 games at Georgia Tech. I mean, he has all those intangibles right there and that's not even talking about what he's done on the field. So I think bringing a guy like him to a room that isn't the most experienced in the world. You've lost Josh Downs, so you've kind of got that slot position open. You've got Kobe Paysour there, who's good, who can also play on the outside. But now you've got a guy like Nate McCullum who can also slide into that slot receiver spot. And in some ways, is he Josh Downs level right now? No. But I think it's not that steep of a drop off as it might have been if you didn't have a guy like that coming in. So I love his experience. I love what he did at Georgia Tech. And I think we've seen glimpses of it already in the spring game. And even going back to some of the practices, AJ, he maybe didn't quite catch your eye like Tez Walker did, but he was also another guy that early on we talked about of like, hey, Nate McCullum looks pretty good. I see why Carolina brought him in. It makes sense. So for me, it's not even just about ability, because he does have ability and he has done some nice things at Georgia Tech. For me, that experience in that room is just, you got to have it. And he's an experienced body because, like I said, it is a wide receiver room that has a lot of talent, but it's also a wide receiver room that a lot of guys still need to prove that they can produce. So when you can bring in almost like a safety net, Nate McCullum, that essentially you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. And now you've got a guy like Drake May throwing to him. And let's not make a mistake about it. Georgia Tech is not QBU. They haven't had a lot of great quarterbacks coming out, at least passing wise, over the last few years. So I think that speaks volume to what McCullum's been able to do. Now you're playing with one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the country. I think his stat lines go up. I think he produces more. And I think he's a leader in that room, which I think is super important. So I'm going to go with Nate McCullum on this one. He's my pick. And I think Carolina fans aren't talking about him enough because some other guys are taking the limelight, especially a guy like Tez Walker. But I think he's a guy come December, let's not even say December. Let's say late October. I think he's a guy Carolina fans are really going to be talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick. He had 60 receptions last year, missed the Carolina game, didn't play. Mm-hmm. So he did that in 11 games, and he had 3 different starting quarterbacks at Georgia Tech. And
that's impressive to me.
It's hard. None of those guys are making anybody's preseason lists for anything, right?
No.
If you saw that one Thursday night game, I mean, that was a mess. And he was able to get production out of that. So to your point, imagine what he does now when he's got other quality receivers around him and he's got Drake May throwing the ball, all that stuff. He's also a guy that can get behind the defense. Mm-hmm. He can take the top off. Josh, I think Josh can too, but Josh didn't do a lot of that. His biggest pass play was the one against Texas A&M in the Orange Bowl. If I'm recalling correctly,
I'm pretty sure that's right.
He was a lot of move the chains stuff. McCollum can move the chains, but McCollum can get behind the defense, and that's why I think watching Kobe Paysour told us that he took a lot of reps this spring on the outside because he's a slot too. And remember when Josh missed 3 games last year, Kobe had 27 receptions for the season. I think he had 24 in those 3 games. He was very productive as a slot, but he's been working a lot on the outside. He can also play on the outside. He's a little bit bigger than McCollum, but imagine 2 of them out there being able to do all the slot stuff, but also be able to play wide. And then you throw in Tez Walker. I love that combination. I think the way McCollum and Pacer play off each other is going to cause headaches galore for opposing defenses, and it's going to allow them both to be highly productive. 60 receptions, he got a lot, is what he got at Georgia Tech last year. I think that would be a lot this year at Carolina, simply because there's a lot of guys who are going to catch balls. But I think that's a pretty good number to start from. So if he does catch 60 out of the slot, and Walker's what we think he's going to be, and Pacer is what we think he's going to be, and then you look at guys like Andre Green getting better, and you look at J.J. Jones, who started last year, and you look at Blackwell, and then the use of the tight ends, and Chip Lindsey wants to throw more to the backs out of the backfield, something that I think Elijah Green and George Pettaway could be very effective at. I think 60 receptions would be a really good number to start from, and I think it's very achievable, and I think it would be an even more productive 60 than what he got at Georgia Tech last year, because I could see him crossing the goal line more than he did for the Yellow Jackets as well. So I love your pick. I think both of these were really good picks, but we were both on Nate McCollum at first. So of course I highly endorse your selection.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans will agree with it too. Because again, he isn't a guy he's not getting talked about as much as some other the transfers are, but he is a guy that when you look at the stat line, you look at what he's done, it's impressive. And Ryan Cohen the same way.
He's fun.
Impressive before he came in, and he also could potentially be a huge factor for Carolina next year if he can consistently hit field goals like he's done in his past. So again, I like those two picks. I want to hear from y'all though. Get involved. Links below: Twitter, Facebook, our website as well, TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can come get involved and let us know if you agree with our picks, who you think is going under the radar a little bit. We want to hear from you guys. So come get involved and let us know. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another Daily Drop. Appreciate y'all watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. See you on the next one. Thanks, guys.